Welcome back, everyone. Well, no one will deny the fact that all of us who live in this area are really fortunate because it is so rich in history. Between the Saratoga battlefield and Ticonderoga and probably everything in between, north, south, east, and west, there's a piece of history here. So joining me today is a real-life archaeologist and professor of anthropology at SUNY Adirondack and at Plymouth State University, David Starbuck. Welcome, David.
It's good to be here.
It's great to have you here. I don't even know how we're going to cram all this in the time allotted. David is not only a serious pro, but very passionate about his field of expertise. I got to start with something he said to me. He said, most people look ahead or look up. I spend my life looking down. I thought that was kind of clever.
Archaeologists are great at finding coins.
That's right. I bet they are. Sure.
We're always looking at the ground, finding artifacts.
That's right.
And doesn't everyone do that?
I don't know if everybody does that, but you certainly do. Hey, David, I know it'd be of interest to our viewers. You know, some people aspire to be astronauts or whatever. When you were young, did this start when you were young, this overwhelming sense that you needed to discover things?
I think so, because I was always out in the fields and the woods finding skeletons, animal skeletons, and dragging them home. It was just exciting. It was free. It was new. My mother probably wasn't very happy, but I loved doing it. But also, I came from a National Geographic family. And I tell that to my students all the time. If you grow up with National Geographic, you're interested in ancient things, you're interested in other cultures, you're interested in discoveries all over the world. And I push National Geographic all the time.
You know what, and I shouldn't say this categorically, I don't know how many people have subscription to National Geographic, but I do. I think it's an absolutely fabulous magazine to read.
I think for at least a whole generation of baby boomers,
that's right,
National Geographic was our first exposure to ancient cultures.
Right.
I wanted to go and dig in Africa for the earliest humans, and I still want to. I can't help it.
Now, you're a graduate of Yale University,
right?
A doctorate, correct?
I was an undergraduate at the University of Rochester, and then I went to Yale wanting to dig in Mexico. And originally I spent several years working in Mexico. My dissertation was down there in an ancient city, but more and more I liked early American historical sites.
Yes.
And when I was still a graduate student, I dug up Eli Whitney. Not the cotton gin, but he had a gun factory.
Wow.
And some people said he invented interchangeable parts at that gun factory. That got me going with early American historical sites, because there were stories there about invention and famous people like Eli Whitney. And I still love retelling or telling in new ways the story of early America, but using archaeological sites, using artifacts. And every time we discover a bayonet, a button, every time we make a connection with an early person who lived hundreds of years ago, it is so exciting. It's not memorizing the past, it's discovering things from the past and telling stories about it.
Well, you know what? You hear this said frequently. There are people that make things and people that discover things. You know, another thing about archaeology, of course, is that you have to be a seriously patient person.
Oh, yes. I say that to my students all the time.
I bet.
They want to find something grand the first 5 minutes, and then they get bored. And I told some students the other day, because we were digging behind one of my college buildings, I said, you know, it may be days before you even find a rusty nail. And when you say that to a student, they look sort of discouraged.
Yeah, sure.
But they all want to find that personal thing, that button, the very first minute. But if they keep going, if they keep acting excited, if they really are optimistic and hopeful, then they might become an archaeologist. But after 5 minutes, if they get bored and walk away, you've lost them.
Well, sure, but you know, again, it speaks to the kind of person that has that either intellectual curiosity or passion, or is, like you were saying, you know, as a youngster, you're in the woods bringing back bones from animals. I bet your parents love that.
I still do that.
I bet you do. You know, I asked David before we went on air, what was his biggest find? You know, you kind of want to drift there. And he told me that there's two, but there's one he can't tell me about, so there's a mystery involved with that. But the second one was absolutely fascinating because it had to do with a historical figure that really, in many opinions, changed the face of the Revolutionary War, and that was Jane McCray. So tell us a bit about that one.
In 2003, with a court order and a forensics team from around the country, we went into the grave of Jane McCray in Fort Edward. She was killed, she was scalped by Native Americans attached to General Burgoyne's army in 1777. Up until that time, only a small number of Americans were waiting to fight the British Army when they arrived in Saratoga. Well, when Jane McCray was murdered and scalped, everyone was so offended, they all showed up to fight the British.
Right.
And that led to our first victory of the American Revolution.
The Battle of Saratoga.
The Battle of Saratoga.
That's right.
Jane was buried that year. She was dug up in 1822, moved to a new cemetery, dug up again in the 1850s, and moved to Union Cemetery in Fort Edward. That is where we had to get all sorts of legal permissions to go into the grave because her oldest relative, a woman in her 90s, had said, "What can you do to bring back Jane McCray's story? Such an important story of an early woman. There's so few good women's stories in early America." And Jane's story was tragic and inspirational at the same time. So we put our team together. We went into the cemetery. It was early April. It had snowed the day before. It was freezing cold, but it was very exciting. And we ended up with an hour-long show on the History Channel after we found her remains.
Wow, David.
And the family had an exciting story.
Oh, I bet. Now, you've got a dig planned for this summer, correct?
Yes.
Part of SUNY Adirondack's program is an annual summer dig, right?
Right.
I may not be saying that exactly correct.
Oh, you're saying it just fine.
I am, okay. So what are you doing this summer?
This summer, we're in the Lake George Battlefield Park. We've done local military digs through SUNY Adirondack since 1991. And no other college in the region has done so many digs with French and Indian War sites.
Right.
But this summer in Lake George, we're in the Battlefield Park from July 5 until August 12. It's the high ground that has such a commanding view over the south end of Lake George. There was the Battle of Lake George. There were a number of military camps there. In 1759, they started building an enormous English fort, Fort George. We started digging the fort last summer, but there were campsites, there were tent sites, there were huts, there probably are officers' huts scattered over about 30 acres of park. So we're returning there this summer with a team of students and volunteers, new people who've never dug before, plus veteran diggers who've been with us for 20 and 30 years. So this is a chance for SUNY Adirondack to be out in the community, doing original research, and making a difference, learning things about history that probably have never been known before.
Wow, think about the sense of discovery with just the line you just said, discovering something that no one knew about.
Every archaeologist spends the winter just frustrated, making plans for the next summer. We can't wait to get outdoors again.
You know, it's so interesting talking to you because David is so dedicated to this, and of course you have the experience and knowledge and the passion to do this. I want people to know that you don't have to be an expert. You could be a novice. You could be any age, by the way. I think you said 18 plus, right?
Yes.
Just because of the nature of the work and what needs to be done. But, you know, if you want to discover more about our area, contact SUNY Adirondack. If you're a student and you're looking for extra credit, I think, what is it, a 2-week, 3-week dig?
It's 6 weeks altogether.
Oh, is it? Okay.
But it's a minimum of 2 weeks, and you get 3 college credits in just 2 weeks. Or for 4 weeks, you get 6 credits. But you can't get more than 6 credits total.
I got it.
Lots of students from all over have joined us each summer, and lots of volunteers, school teachers. People have a little bit of summer vacation time.
Right.
Folks who have a 9-to-5 job, or students who've sat behind the desk all winter. In the middle of the summer, it's truly fun in the sun. You're discovering things, you're working with excited and enthusiastic people, and you're making a difference in our local area. So the fact that SUNY Adirondack has done this for so long, it's not just education in a classroom sitting behind a desk. It's getting out in the community, discovering things, making history come alive.
You know, I was just going to say that.
Yeah.
I was just going to.
It's true.
I'm an alumni of the History Channel, and I was there when we came up with the theme line, "Make History Come Alive," and that's exactly
Yes.
what you're doing. So, look, if you're at all interested in this, contact SUNY Adirondack. The digs happen over the summer, and as you can probably tell, you'll be instructed by or mentored by somebody who really knows this. Well, David, thank you so much for coming in, and we're going to have you back. I want to find out what you discovered, okay?
Very good.
And in the meantime, keep your head up.
Okay.
Okay, all right, good. Thanks a lot, David. To see this interview again, you can head to our website, looktvonline.com.